Hey guys, I promised a deconversion video, and last night I was inspired to write. This will be one of several deconversion videos, which will all sound like different stories, but they're actually all multi-layered on top of each other. Because if this video was the only reason why I lost my faith to believe me, I'd probably still be a Christian in fear of hell. There were other factors involved, but this is a really complicated version of why I am no longer a Christian. I was raised homeschooled, and my mother taught me that thinking and creativity are very important, and that I must learn to love learning so that I can better please God. I really did. I devoured every single bit of scripture I could. I was attentive in sermons as any child can be. I even did outside reading. I loved reading Revelations and the Fox's Book of Martyrs, which went well until I got to about the Spanish Inquisition, and the methods they used got to be way too graphic for a 10 to 12-year-old. I studied the Bible like it was the back of my hand. I had large passages, entire books of scripture memorized. I was told that all the answers of life's problems were in this book, and I saw no reason to read outside of it for anything but, of course, pleasure on spiritual issues. Then at a certain point in high school, I began running into problems that were not talked about in the Bible, issues that were more complicated than the simple concepts talked about in Scripture. I believed, as the Bible and others told me, that if I walked the path of righteousness and followed His Word, then other than persecution from sinners for my faith, I would not have to worry about anything. As it turns out, I got nothing but problems, especially socially, from fellow Christians. They didn't have the same obsessions I did in saving souls and figuring out new strategies to convert people. They seemed only mildly concerned that people were going to burn in agony for eternity if we didn't work harder. I felt utterly isolated, and to make matters worse, a combo of my Asperger's and homeschooling left me utterly socially inept. No one ever persecuted me for my beliefs like I had been told. They ostracized me for being an awkward weirdo. Nice guy, but sometimes, well, all the time, well, a geek. I had trained and studied all my life to be able to always give an answer for Jesus and to pray for my enemies when they persecuted me, and none of this ever happened. There was nothing in the Bible about what to do when no one wanted to hang out with you because you were annoying. Nothing about how to get a girl to like you. It implied that God would take care of all that. Also at this time, the love of new knowledge tapped out. People who say you can always find something new in the Bible are the people who are slow readers and those who don't read it every day. At a certain point, you will milk it dry. I reached a spiritual drought. My brain had been programmed to get serotonin and feelings of spirituality from learning, and there was nothing new to learn. However, all the other stuff to learn was satanic, so I couldn't look at that. I liked chemistry and math because there was nothing in it I knew of that went against God, but I'd been trained to love little facts that are supposed to bind together to make a solid argument. Math and chemistry are not like that. That's other fields. Chemistry is to an extent until I got to the tougher stuff, and then it became hard math, which uses a different style of thinking than that of studying the Bible. Anyway, I ended up leaving my church because I felt that they weren't very Christian-like, and I jumped from church to church and experienced the same thing. At a certain point, I just gave up on the church and began considering forming my own, though I was too busy at the time, so I planned ahead for the future. In the meantime, I began engaging the heathen enemy in discussions and found out they were way more accepting of me than the church had ever been. We didn't agree on religious beliefs at all, but bit by bit they transferred new knowledge to me that I had never heard of before. I was hungry for it. It filled my spiritual famine like little rain clouds and made me think about how I could incorporate these new facts into my current belief system. As I discovered new things about philosophy and psychology and began changing the nature of God and began believing that the Bible kind of belittled His greatness and power and began to realize that the human perception and understanding of what God was supposed to be would never be anywhere correct. Then I went over to the Middle East and realized how easily meaning of writing could change from one culture to another, or even lifestyle to another. Ideas are transmittable to an extent, but unless you have experienced it, there are real nuances you just won't get. I began trying to read the Bible from the mindset of a Middle Easterner, because that's where it was written, and it became a completely different book. Traveling had a huge impact on my protected worldview. I went to Europe and realized people there seemed happier and healthier, and Jesus and God were hardly ever mentioned at all. Religion didn't matter much at all, and they were happier than most Christians I'd met. It was a real eye-opener. After that, I finally began studying evolution and archaeology in a completely non-biased viewpoint. I stopped looking for proof of God and instead just looked at the evidence we had. I also began looking into philosophy, especially Eastern philosophy, and that changed my entire viewpoint on reality. It was amazing. My learning drought was over. Instead of having to run all new knowledge through a filter and incorporate it very slowly into my worldview, I could now open the floodgate and fill my head with profound new ideas and look at all the evidence for myself and pick the best. A few years later, I switched from chemistry to microbiology to further feed this need. Yes, when I first started changing this mindset, I studied some false leads like some mysticism or conspiracy theories, but I was able to, after a time, determine whether it was incorrect, and I figured out how to set up a mental dam to contain the flood, so I had time to weigh if it is true. I didn't need to take the time to incorporate new rationalizations for a belief from these new facts. I am happier now than I have ever been in my life. I have friends and a girlfriend, and I am no longer socially awkward. I can fill up on new knowledge 24/7 without a filter, and I don't fear hell or other people's suffering. I no longer have to rationalize anything that disagrees with my reality. My reality gets changed when new facts arise. I don't have to look for places in my reality and come up with a baseless explanation and try to explain new facts and discoveries. I have hope for my future and humanity, and I have the empathy to try and move the world forward, even if it is just by the slightest bit.